And hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, the star herself, Sophia. What a woman is our Lorraine. We always knew she was a hell of a woman, but my goodness me, you can groove, girlfriend. You can
Rock
groove.
it. Nearly 16, I'm still rocking it.
You are. You are. It's fantastic. Oh, we're in a bit of mauve today. Very, very, very classy colour. That classy colour. Very nice. Very nice. Doug's is in. Also, Doug's got a complicated combination this week, Lorraine. So we've got the beanie and we've got a t-shirt.
And glasses.
But probably glasses aren't helping you stay warm. So how's the temperature in Adelaide? Is it ambivalent, Doug?
It's supposed to rain today, and it's a bit overcast, dark and overcast at the moment, and I'm in the lounge because it's sort of comfy and
It looks
but
very
got
glamorous. Can I say
these socks on, so my feet are getting a bit cold, and
we'll be getting socks shortly. No, well, can I say you look like a gentleman of leisure? You look fantastic. Very nice. He looks like he's out of a late 1960s Playboy shoot, doesn't he, Lorraine? It's like, I'm a man at home in my lounge room. Hello. Hello, ladies. Good on you, Dougster. And look, Kylie, the traveller around the known and unknown universe, I didn't know where you would be. Gee, when did you fly back, Kyles?
Yesterday. I just dropped the hire car back.
How was the hike?
It was really nice. Yeah, it was really good. Better than my old one. So, but I had the best time. Thank you for Lorraine and Julie for coming in and meeting me. And sorry I didn't get to this time, Doug, next time, but I had the best time.
You look like...
She is beautiful in the flesh as she is on the screen.
Well, can I say, I lived vicariously, Adrian, through them both. There was a picture of them both drinking their own body weight in Chardonnay. The glasses were bigger than their heads.
You know, I don't even drink. I haven't had a drink for years. And I thought, do you know what, darn it, she's come all this way. I'm going to have a glass of wine.
Did you have your underwear off in about 10 minutes? How are you going, Lorraine?
Well, there was talk about her climbing on top of the piano at one stage, though.
Oh, welcome to it. Fantastic. So beautiful Eleanor's in. We're thrilled to have Eleanor in. She's legendary. We've got beautiful Sophia in. Anastasia's in. We've missed you, darling, from your glamorous white location. You are magnificent. And Liam has joined us from the middle of the night. Now we love you, Liam. So we just love you. We love you, Liam. And Adrian, of course, has joined us from another glamorous location. Now, Liam, I know your BFF, my BFF, has left the building like Elvis. Are you okay? When colleagues leave, it is devastating.
We actually had, excuse me. So we've had a lovely celebration, Tara. Thanks for asking. Tara, Alison came with her partner to Manchester because they were passing through, and we spent yesterday afternoon with each other. We went for dinner and we had a really nice time, and we just had a bit of a cry and a bit of a celebration, and it was just, you know, to round it all off.
Yeah.
And then I got a phone call from Alison's former boss, my current boss, the big boss, who basically said, yeah, you need to apply for senior lecturer because we're going to lose you. So that was interesting.
Right. Now, Liam, I would apply for senior lecturer. And it's lovely to have Bree in. Good morning, beautiful Bree. We're in such complicated times in international higher education, Liam. The system's so unstable. The first thing I'd say to you is those relationships that you build with those humans, they last you through your career. So no one's stable in their institution anymore. So you don't get your sense of secondary socialization from the institution. You get it from the comrades you've met on the way through, right? And so you two will stay together forever. That's important. But noting the volatility, Liam, mate, when they say stuff like that, to quote my 95-year-old mother, you bite his legs off. And what she means is you bite their legs off so they can't get away. Right. So you need to immediately apply for senior lectureship, get it. And if this is the upward trajectory, if you are, my beloved husband, Jamie, refers to this as dead man's boots promotion.
Yeah.
And it's going to be increasingly important for Adrian's generation, Sophia's generation, your generation. It's going to be dead man's boots because they're going to sack. What's actually happening is they've sacked all these people through the restructures, and people have just gone, I'm out, girlfriend. And there actually now is there must be an engineering term for this, Kylie. We're now at below the level that's actually functional. We have been there for 3 or 4 years, but now there's actually not warm bodies to stand in front of classrooms. So Liam, why?
It feels like whole departments, whole schools are just doing, like in the soap operas when you get the recasts and they're just not quite as good as the original actor. That feels like what academic schools are doing. So maybe I'm like the third actor to play, criminology lecturer.
No, can I just say, I just went straight to Bold and the Beautiful. We all know the second ridge was absolutely rubbish. It was absolutely rubbish. But you're not the second ridge, Liam. You're the third ridge, and the third ridge is going to be legendary. Brooke, by the time Brooke's finished, she's going to have that much glad wrap on her face, Kyle, that a face is where a butt is, right? There's going to be pulled that. So
She is wearing a lot more clothes, if you ever notice at the moment. So
it's just the face. It's just the stretching of the face. It's like there's no expressions at all. Ridge, I love you, Ridge. I love you, Ridge. So Liam, you're not that person. But Liam, go for it. This is ruthless. These are dreadful times. Go hard. Say yes, go hard.
Yeah, I think it's because my bosses probably know that I've been approached by some other institutions, and Alison's had a really good word with me, and she just said there's no loyalty to anywhere. Now she said those days are over. They were over about 30 years ago. So
she is right. And it's terrible, isn't it? Because we committed to the higher education project. We've talked about this, Kyles. I believe in the project. I believe in the institutions. I believe in the beat. Thank you, Lorraine. I believe it in this, but it's we've been hurt too often. We've been injured too often. We've been wounded too often to be able to look someone in the eye and trust them. And, we've got to live lives of integrity and trust and authenticity and accountability. And these institutions are just not letting us live those lives, Liam. So, apply, get the promotion, get the dough, move to the next one. Isn't it terrible? Oh, unbelievable. A beautiful city's in. Hello, it is lovely to see you again. How did you go? You had a big event last week, didn't you? How did you go? Oh, sound, Angel. See if I can help you.
Been trying to recover from the post-holiday slump. So it's been a bit trying to catch up on what needs to be done. And I have been having trouble kind of grounding myself in the now, because I've been thinking about, okay, what happens after I finish? Do I go back to corporate? Do I consider academia? Is it an environment that I want to be in? So I've been trying to push those thoughts away. It keeps creeping up every time I try to focus on writing. So that's where,
So, Siti, my darling, the first thing I'd say to you is we always try and be honest and robust about higher education. The point is you must finish that thesis and finish that thesis as quickly as possible. Once you've got the thesis, then you can make decisions. When you're doing a PhD, half the population of Fremantle is doing a PhD. If you ever go to Fremantle City, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Bunch of people wearing black turtlenecks, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. I'm doing a PhD. They've been doing that for 15 years, okay? So everybody's doing a PhD. Finishing a PhD is crucial, and that is how, if you choose, you can get into an academic post. So don't cut off that option. But what I'd say to you is don't cut off any option. Look at I use the cricket metaphor a lot. Look at the ball that is being bowled at you. So if you've got that job opportunity, look at that ball and bat it back, right? So don't worry about what's going to happen the next over or after lunch. What's the ball that's coming at you? And so today, give me your best day on the PhD. Tomorrow, give me the best day on the PhD. Finish it and then make decisions. What do you think, Liam? I just get a nod.
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry, I've got a really bad cough and I've had laryngitis as well.
That's what happens when you sing Marlene Dietrich for 24 hours, Liam. That voice is what occurs, mate.
Yeah, it just struck me when you said about everybody doing a PhD, smoking a cigarette and having a long black coffee. Yeah, I never ever aspired to that lifestyle ever, you know, in the UK. I just don't think there was every time to do it. Like it just shocks me. Like,
I know.
is that real?
Oh, look, the northern quarter's filled with crew like that too.
No, but they're pretending to do a PhD. They're not actually doing one. Like
That's
they're
right.
actually just say they're doing one, and they're actually not. Like,
And so, City darling, I hope that helps, because remember, 50% of the people that start a PhD don't finish. Attrition rate of 50% around the world, right? So if you finish, you're already in the top half, and you're a hell of a lot better than that, darling. So all I'd say is open the vista out to the opportunities of what you can do, and you can do a lot more with a PhD than without a PhD. You've got a whole occupation that's open to you. And you've seen through Liam that if you've got a PhD, then, you know, because so many people are leaving the system, those opportunities will emerge. All right. Oh, bless you. Now, the Jess is in. Now, oh, you're fantastic. And by the way, we should say, Lorraine, this is Digital Office Hours 50. It's number 50.
Oh, is it? Oh, happy half a century with it.
Half as hard. It's younger than I, but only just. So thank you all for being with me. This crew that been with me right from the start. It's unbelievable. So we're thrilled. So, and beautiful Maeve's in. Good morning, beautiful Maeve. That's terrific. So team, we have some material. I still want to keep returning back to how we ground ourselves in the present for City. I think that's a great one. That's on my card, darling. We also have some queries that came from Jess. So we've got a couple of Jess. Oh, yes, she hasn't forgotten about me. Great meeting yesterday, Jess. You were legendary. So Jess wanted us to talk about the introduction. We did the conclusion last week. So she's getting some grief. She's getting some pain. She's getting some grief from her supervisors about what are you doing? What's the genre of this work? And so we're going to talk about the introduction, and we're going to talk about gap, minding the gap, and how you can figure a gap in a PhD. But also for Sophia, I'm doing some research at the moment where I'm needing to confirm this in an article. What is the gap? What's the important bit in this research? So I think it's a useful PhD skill and beyond. And also we got this query from a lovely guy who doesn't want to be named for obvious reasons, and he'd heard the recent book on the pernicious PhD supervisor, and he's got himself a battery hen farmer. And he's pumping out the articles, and it's destroying his life, and he wants some strategies from the WISE group here about how to handle a battery hen farmer. So we'll try and get to that, but we'll start with the live questions. Is there anything live before we launch into the intro? What's happening? Any questions? Eleanor, darling, are you okay? Because you're obviously at the start. The intro may be useful for you.
Yes, and just before the intro, when I done my master, I done the opposite. I done everything, and then I throw, you know, epistemology, ontology, and methodology, even if it's not very clear explain. So this is almost like a catch up. This time I thought I will be shopping for this very, very thoroughly. What kind of ontology I want to use, how I can see myself epistemology, methodology, and method, and sorted out this in the beginning and lay this as a foundation. And the more I dig in this concept, and now it's axiology, like study of values, also lighting up. And the trick is everywhere you look in, everybody has their own ideas. It was not very clear. This is universal approach on this. And I thought if we just maybe talk about this just in general terms, and this is what I come up with.
Wow.
Different style of different things. And I don't think so there will be very clear how I can present them, but I think it will be better to introduce this in introduction chapter.
You are very wise. You are very, very wise. So if you can have a sense, and this is hard, Eleanor, through a 3-year PhD, you keep returning to ontology, epistemology. You keep returning to methodology. Methodology is the easy one, but if you can integrate methodology and epistemology and ontology, we are winning at life. We are winning at life. But you'll have to just keep touching it again to go, I've got it, and then you lose it. And that's what happens with most philosophy, that you get it and then you lose it. So, you know, if you just have a sense that ontology is, you know, really about how objects exist in the world. objects exist in the world and how they're named and positioned in the world. So what your world is, it could be worldview. That's a little bit reified, but how the world is constructed through objects, and that's different from how, somebody else, whether from a colonized background or from an impoverished background, configures their ontology. So it's the objects and their relationships. Epistemology is a theory of knowledge. What is your theory of knowledge? How are you configuring what is knowledge and the why of knowledge? And methodology is the why of the how. Methods are how you're gathering your data. At its most basic, how are you gathering data? That's methods. Methodology is why you have selected to engage with data in that way, and what perhaps you're not collecting, what you're not finding through that selection of methods. Is that helping a bit? Darling, we'll keep going there, we'll keep going back there, and I'll just do it again, and we'll do it again. I carried in a little notebook, a little exercise book, my definitions from my honours year. So I used to write these words down with definitions. I used to carry this little book around with me when I was on the bus, when I was doing a commute, when I was in a queue, and I would just look, and I would remember, and I would forget, and I would look again, and I would remember. And that's iterative learning. Does that help, Eleanor?
Very much, thank you.
Oh, you're the best. Fantastic. Look, we'll go to Jess because it may be. Oh, what have we got? What have we got there? Lorraine, what are you showing me? I'm excited.
Exactly the same thing, Tara. List of ontology, epistemology, methodology. Carry it around with me. If I'm on a flight somewhere, on a train, just to make sure I'm not losing.
Yeah, it's funny. The books get bigger and bigger. This is my book I'm carrying around with colours.
Look, when I left Adelaide for the last time, Eleanor, I had to work out what I was going to do with my art folder, where I'd done everything that you've done. I'd got to the soup of the A1s, right? And I went, now is it time for me to lose this art folder, right? So they do keep getting bigger and bigger. You're right. Oh, you're fantastic. Now, Jess, this is going to be Jess' digital office hours, but Jess, you want to start us somewhere else? Well, darling, you've given us two. And you could.
I just wanted to add on to what you were saying about the gap, just to sort of add another layer of complexity to it. What if the gap is that there isn't anything? So in the literature I'm using to sort of support my PhD, I'm using the tourism literature, but there's no specific literature on enclave islands, and any literature on enclave islands is more about the economic and socialization of setting up tourism spaces in tiny, that have different laws to the culture and traditional laws on the country in which they are.
Yes.
So like Disneyland in Japan has different laws. Cruise ships have different laws depending on the waters. They keep their own laws, set of governance. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's where the literature is at. Nobody's actually looked at mental health in these specific spaces. So there's nothing to say, well, here's as I'm saying it, that's the gap, isn't it?
Let's start with the gap to conclude this, Jess. So Jess, see, you're a genius. But can I say, and this is not Jess, can I say, but in my previous lives and my previous jobs, I would have students, not as able as the wonderful students on this call, but I would have students come into my office and say, Tara, there is no literature in this field. There is nothing. Oh, Liam, you remember this story. So this used to happen in Brighton a lot. So Tara, there's nothing here. And I take them to my computer, and I'm so old, but Google Scholar was still available. So go into Google Scholar and say, just give me some keywords. Yes, enclave islands, workers, transient workers, mental health, and just maybe one or two scholars. And of course, I'd put those into Google Scholar, and 38,507 returns would emerge. So there was supposedly nothing in that field. And then just from doing the most basic of Google Scholar searches, 38,000 articles came up. Straight to Liam.
Myself and Alison discussed this. In the last 5 years, I don't know what's happened to information literacy in England and Wales, particular amongst possibly our postgraduate taught students. Last year when I was at another university, I supervised 2 Masters of Research students. This was Masters of Research. And I said, I'm a dissertation supervisor. We've got 6 to 8 months to write this up. Like, what do we want to do? Why are we doing? What is our motivation? It was like, Well, I couldn't really decide what I wanted to do after undergraduate, and I was offered a loan, and I got this kind of like financial like rerun
Yeah,
of what was happening in their lives, and there was just no motivation for scholarship, information literacy,
that's right.
or anything. And I'd have to give sounding boards like of suggested projects that they could do. It got to the point where we had to create projects for Masters of Research students.
Terrible.
Like we had to write it 500 words of a project. Our boss asked us to do that because the students were just not able to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to blame the students because it's the system and the process and the structures
That's
which
right.
they find themselves in, which
Yeah.
is really difficult. I know. But I just rewound to about 11 years ago when I was at University of Manchester in the law school, and brutalist, conservative, this
Absolutely.
institution, and you would be shown the door. Like if you dare say that to a senior supervision, like your name would be dust,
I know.
So
And that's the thing, Liam, as you know, Steve Redhead was in that same law school, and it hasn't changed
Yes.
since he did it in the 70s.
No.
So it's black letter law. It's you're called out by your last name and you will answer a question in front of 350 people. That's, people talk about andragogy and, the abundance model of teaching and learning. The University of Manchester Law School is not that. But can I say, Liam, it does provide intellectual discipline. So I think there are a lot of problems occurring. I think the lack of information literacy is an imperative. I luckily this week wonderfully got an invitation to do two keynotes, including one in Salford, the University of Salford, and they exactly want work on information literacy post-COVID, Liam, because what did happen is the students had the kitchen science experiments, had the online lectures, had the online seminars, and didn't participate fully. And so therefore they've now arrived in a graduate program, master's or PhD, and they haven't read enough. They haven't got the meta skills to learn how to read at higher level, and to write substantive scope and scale. So there's lots of, we can construct a blame culture, or we can start from here and realise that in doctoral education now, we're having to do the work that could have been accepted to have been done in third year of an undergraduate degree.
And I also wanted to say, Salford are looking for a new Deputy Pro Vice Chancellor. If you want to join the ranks, Tara, come back over here. Let's go for it.
I have heard of this matter. I have heard of this matter. But thank you, Liam, darling. But so I'll see you in Salford. Now, Sophia, please critique us before I go back to our gorgeous girl. I go back to Jess and we talk about the gap. But so what are you thinking about this, Queen Sophia?
Oh, no, it wasn't a critique. I just wanted to go back to Jess, if that's okay.
Let's go back to bloody Jess.
I had a similar experience with my PhD where I was writing about a topic that hadn't been covered, and I'm sure you're all over this already, but just to kind of refocus the conversation on you, what I did was find the most relevant literature from different fields and then use an interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary methodology to put them in conversation with one another, and that's how I kind of tackle that issue. So if you don't have something that's talking precisely to what you're writing about, just find the things that are most applicable and try and kind of create a patchwork that way. And I'm sure Tara has maybe some more specific suggestions for how to approach that. But
sweetheart, brilliantly done. When we talk about the introduction, I actually had written that down about orienting through the discipline, transdisciplinarity. So that's crucial, Jess. We're going to return there. Sophia is a genius. But just in terms of the gap, make sure it is a gap. And what you are configuring, don't say there's nothing in the field, because the moment any student says there's nothing in the field, the examiner will show you to be a liar, because they'll find stuff and they'll go, just because you haven't read it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So never say nothing. What you've got to do is protect yourself. So be really, really calm and say, right, so enclave islands, there's work on island studies, there's work on tourism on islands, there's enclave islands, there's work on the casualisation of the tourist workforce, right? There's work on how contracts are configured, the transient nature of it. There's work on mental health and the tourism workplace, right? So all these chunks of knowledge have created what I think Julie is often described as the donut. I love me a donut. I'm trying to use Julie's argument. I think it's from leadership theory too, Jules. I saw a donut model in leadership theory too. But so there's all these chunks of knowledge that sort of align, that have a bit of a rub, but they create a donut and your research is in the hole in the middle, right? That's the gap. So the gap is not that research doesn't exist, but that the interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, post-disciplinary alignments have not really connected it up yet. So part of what you're doing is the difficult translational work between these anti-disciplines. How are we going, Jess?
I'm more confused, but learning. I see what you're saying. So I like the interdisciplinary lens. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you. That's a really good point. So bringing in these ones that I'm thinking, well, that's not what I'm talking about, but how can it contribute to the idea that I'm forming? And I feel like, is there any kind of search term generation support that you can get? Because I feel like I might be missing something. Like, why isn't anybody looking into this? And every now and then something will pop up that's using terms that I haven't looked into before. I think I nearly missed this because they're calling enclave islands, they're calling them tourism spaces, or so then I've got a whole new term that I use. But, you know, what if there's a term I'm missing?
Yes.
How do you?
Yeah, so Jess, your supervisor wrote a book on this many, many years ago called The University of Google. And what happens is you only have the keywords that are part of your daily vocabulary, and you don't know what you don't know. So you put those keywords into Google or Google Scholar, and the returns that come to you come within your level of comfort because you've put the words that you know, so you get the stuff you know. So so the world's a beautiful thing. And that's how we're in the mess we are now, you know, basically 20 years later, because we've endlessly created these rebounding chambers. We haven't been challenged to develop our vocabulary further, to question, and I don't know, we're not reading enough. So the best way in Google Scholar to get some really, really great results is know the key scholars in the field. And then you put their names with concepts into Google Scholar, and suddenly the caliber and the quality of the material that you find lifts. It's when you put the scholar's name in, when you put lots of them in, boom, up you go. So it's about disciplines, it's about the diversity of terms. I put all the terms in and key scholars, and then suddenly, boom, up the quality goes. But Jess, the challenge is you don't know what you don't know. And that's why, as Liam said, information literacy is crucial, because what information literacy is you know what you don't know and you have strategies to know it. So you're doing fantastically. We'll do a pit stop to beautiful Sitter and Kylie, and then we'll come back. You're hanging in there, Jess. Hang in, girlfriend. Right, go Sitter, darling.
I like all the questions raised by Jess because it's what I am going through now. So if we go straight to keywords, I feel like the first year of PhD, it tends to be a very myopic focus. And it's not because it's intentional, it's just the very nature, because you're only just dabbling your toes into it. So keywords tend to be very myopic, but that's not a bad thing because it does help you ground and get at least the foundational of what you need to know from the obvious lens. And then the not so obvious lens, those are pathways which come over time. And it's not something which, I mean, maybe someone has developed a methodology, and that could be what Sophia mentioned about transdisciplinary. It's something which you stumble upon when you're having random conversations with someone who isn't even in your field. So I think these type of platforms are very important. And what I found helpful is that earlier on, when you start building your research and you have your list of keywords, every month you kind of want to track your progress on where your research is progressing. And I did this just a few days ago, where I realized that my first 6 months was very myopic, where it was very legal on liability, and I kept hammering on the same keywords. And then as I started reading more, it expanded to law and philosophy. And then it expands more to law and sociology. And these are because I'm reading more and more books, and then it explores different concepts. So I think don't worry too much on what you're missing, because actually it's already there. It's just right in front of you. It's just that you haven't tied the dots together, but it will come. It will come the more you read. Yeah.
Beautifully said, my darling. And Jess, this is called the information scaffold, by the way. It scaffolds you up. So it moves from, and obviously I'm writing about this at the moment, but it moves from everyday literacies to disciplinary literacies to critical literacies, right? But so what happens is you don't know that there are other slices of the cake of literacy until you find them. So all of us tend to live in our little slice of literacy and we go, we understand the world, right? And actually you're just in a slice of literacy. There are other slices. And so you've got to sort of look up and see the cake. Kylie on her first coffee for the day. Cheers, mate.
Again, it's probably just going to show my naivety, but we talk about the interdisciplinary and the transdisciplinary.
Yes.
But where does bricolage sit? Is that part of, because it's bring a bit of everything, which I thought interdisciplinary was.
Right. So so I'll sort of answer that. So interdisciplinarity is a predictable, careful movement into and between the disciplines, Kyles. So
Okay.
it's very carefully done. So we'll use Citi's wonderful example about socio-legal studies, right, Kyles? So you're in legal studies, you're in, say, black letter law, so you're in case law, and then you suddenly realize, oh, there's a whole thing called law in context that's been in existence in the last 30, 40 years. And then it's socio-legal studies. So you've got sociology and law, and here are these disciplines. And you don't just sort of slam them together and hope for the best, like Lorraine having a great night out. You got to actually carefully, you got to carefully, and this is the epistemological moment, by the way, colleagues.
Yeah.
Carefully bring them through in a predictable, robust, and repeatable fashion. Now, what bricolage is bricolage is a term used in semiotic structuralism and then sort of post-structuralism to describe how bits and pieces of signifiers, forms in the culture are brought together. Now, it can be in quite a chaotic way. After the fact, you can say, oh, look, that's why they were all brought together. But bricolage is basically a way of bringing together an unusual textual system and naturalizing it. Interdisciplinarity is a way of bringing together disciplinary paradigms and theories in an accountable way.
So that's why the readings I've been seeing, there's a lot of people saying bricolage is that just smushing. It's not that controlled way. It's just a very immature, I'll say that way of pushing theory together because you just smush it.
Yeah, and look, you're not the only one that's reading this stuff, Carls. I had a person, I'm sure a lovely human being, get in touch with me saying that she's doing work on bricolage in disciplines, and what I did all those years ago during COVID. Remember those damn Facebook Live things I did? She decided they were bricolage. Now they're not bricolage. Then there's nothing that's bricolage there. But she's decided just if you bring sort of stuff together, then that's intellectual bricolage. Well, look, it could be, but all I'd say, Carls, is these words have come from a very, very distinguished etymology, right? And so bricolage through structuralism had very clear definitions, right?
Yeah.
About signifiers and coding and combinations, right? And then the postmodernists started to cascade that sign system. So I think that's great. I don't tend to, I don't use that word a lot.
Yeah, and that's what I'm wondering. I'm almost worrying, do I just not use that term because that just might draw the crabs even more from my perspective? Do I just talk about it being interdisciplinary?
Look, I think if you're dealing with knowledge, interdisciplinary is accurate, right? And particularly the way you're doing it. If it is about smushing, that's my new word, smushing things together. So you've got textual systems that may or may not be in academic disciplines, but you've got textual systems and they're sort of slamming together like Lorraine having a party for one, then that is sort of bricolage, because what it actually is at its most basic definition, Kyles, is disparate sign systems come together and create a new textual system. Give you an example. The easiest one is always the punks. So they had a black garbage bag. They had safety pins. They cut a hole in the bag, put it on as a frock, attached it together with safety pins. So safety pins have a signifying system. A black garbage bag has a signifying system. When the punks used them, attached them together, it became a frock. That's
a perfect example. Thank you for that. And I love the fact that Lorraine's the one that partied too hard and on the good girls always.
Oh, look, I've found engineers, they're a very calm, nurturing profession in my experience, Kyles. Yeah, nah.
Yeah, most of them don't have a personality, so that's okay. No offense to any other engineers that might be listening in. I'm really sorry, but I missed that lesson where they do the frontal lobotomy.
Oh, you're naughty. You're naughty because you're very, very famous. The engineers love you. So Kylie apologizes in advance. Let's go to Maeve, and we're going to go back to the gap and to the introduction. So Maeve, where do you want to take us, my angel?
I just want to throw in and happy conferencing, Kylie. Well, you were conferencing when it was my birthday, so I thought that was an interesting mix. Yes, I couldn't resist a comment on bricolage. So in my master's, we were invited to do work, and I did a textual theorized bricolage, but I wouldn't do. So everything in that was, there were bits of stuff. It was exactly that bricolage textured experience, but it was all within the discipline of creative writing, sort of. You know what I mean? So bits of theory in it, but not much. So I think my gut feeling, Kylie, would be that if everything is within something, you can do bricolage and it can work, because then you can discuss all the semiotic background that Tara just talked about. But I kind of think for the world we're in and for the world you're in, and a lot of my work is, well, Tara, at one point you described it as post-disciplinary. Yes. So I'm genre bending in every possible way that you can think of. Yeah. And genre is just a word in that sense for disciplinary. So I think your intuition there, now that we've discussed it, is strong.
But thank you, Maeve. So that's good, because let's keep going. Let's hold the word, and I'm happy to read something to see how we're hanging with it too. If you're using it as a trope of bringing stuff together, then it's accurate. All right. So we're hanging there. So let's go back to the legendary Jess. Now, just make sure everything I wrote down about what the gap is. So the reason the gap matters so much, Jess, is because unless you can pinpoint the gap, then you can't specify the SOC, right? So the significant original contribution to knowledge, something can only be significant, original, and a contribution to knowledge if you actually already know existing knowledge. So this is why students are failing doctorates at the moment. I've read 10 of the worst theses I've read in the last 2 years, all of them from Australia, because the students hadn't read enough, because they'd said there was a gap, because they hadn't read the field. Oh, Jess is straight in. Oh, Jess, talk to me.
I also found another wonderful lady down in Melbourne who's done something similar to what I'm doing in the tourism industry. She's created this whole mental health program. Like, she's really famous and amazing. None of it's published. So how do I,
that's cool.
You know, is that something that I include? Because I was Googling her and thinking, where's her papers on this? This is amazing, because she's in all these newspaper articles and magazines and on ABC documentaries and stuff, but none of it's in the, you know, published literature.
Yep.
So how do I access that?
Yeah, so easy. If it exists, if there's a URL, you cite it. So it can be grey literature using the old language. It can be a bit of nitro work, non-traditional research output, or objects, depending what you want. If the knowledge exists, it doesn't have to be peer-reviewed knowledge for it to be knowledge. Some of the smartest people I know have never written a refereed article. So,
yes.
But all I'm saying is that's a great thing. That shows completeness, Jess. You found this wonderful bird down in Melbourne that's producing this fantastic stuff. That's great. So you go, this stuff exists. This is great. This person is a fantastic practitioner doing this work. Now, let's build on that, because you're saying, I know this exists. Examiners are losing their mind when they're saying, well, students, oh, there's an enormous gap. And of course, there's bloody not. There's bloody not. People have written on this for 70 years, you strange human. Just because you haven't read it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's like, what was that line from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? If someone puts a bag over their head, then if they can't see the person that's going to kill them, they won't kill them. So let's just move around the world and put a bag over our head. Thanks, Cheryl. You know what I'm talking about. So, Jess, this human is absolutely crucial. Gather all this literature up, configure the Julie donut, and therefore locate your stuff in the middle. Now, that's the gap, and your SOC comes from the gap. That's where I think people make a mistake. The SOC comes from the gap. You can't prove originality unless you demonstrate to examiners that you know the field. So the gap must be there. So let's go to Lorraine. Go, Lorraine, talk to me, rescue me, darling.
No, just similar to do with the gap and the kind of, I've used grey literature, but probably about only 30%. I've been very careful with the amount, but I've also listened to albums, music albums. So I wanted to really understand veterans and an experience. There was a fantastic album of a gentleman's tour. I think it's called The Dust of Irisan. It's a really good song. But I've also watched films as well. I've watched documentaries and I've got separate lists of those. So I watched a really good film called Kajaki. And even, you know, recalling the old films that you know of for comparison on how engagement in, so my studies around veterans, but the gap there was there isn't any other research with the specific cohort that I'm looking at. So I looked for so although there has been research with this group and in this particular situation, but this is why this is unique, because this group is so closed, subculturally so closed, they will not engage with civilians, let alone anyone in a research field. So but my point is, I think it's given some richness by me. I've learned more by watching certain documentaries, films, listening to music to really understand, and then incorporated that, but only in a small amount. I haven't written heaps about that, otherwise it would just look I'm talking about how I've had such fun watching movies.
Oh, but see now, Lorraine, darling one, this is incredibly important. So our beautiful historian, Queen Mary of the parish, is not with us today, but historians have primary sources and secondary sources. That's how we're taught. And the primary sources are music, film, you know, yes, parliamentary records if you want to do the old posh stuff, but this is the primary fodder of life. This is your data set. This is the archival work. Popular culture is the archive. And my dream in bibliography reference lists, and I so rarely see it these days, is reference lists that are configured by platform. So you have scholarly monographs. You've done it. I love, Lorraine, sadly, I won't be able to examine your thesis because of a conflict of interest, but I would have been straight there and I would have loved it. So scholarly monographs, peer review, journalism, popular music, oral historiography, sonic, you know, soundscapes, you know, motorcycles, right? Material culture, down the list goes, right? So that's perfect. And don't apologize for that. That is the textual fodder of your research, living the dream. Oh, you're amazing. Let's go to Beautiful City. Go, my darling. Or sound, beautiful one.
I think for Jess, it's not so much a what is the gap, but what's the best way to communicate it.
Yes.
Because it sounds that you have already a grasp on what's coming. And so I like Tara's analogy of the donut, because when you reach the introduction, it's like you have to communicate it in a donut way of here's all the literature, and then this is where I'm at. And it's, yes, it's not enough. Yeah, it's nice. Okay. It's not enough to just say that there's no literature, no one has written about it. So that's where I come in, because that is a turnoff and it kind of cuts you off from your relevance from the field. So you have to communicate it in a better way on how this is what already has happened and I'm coming in from this angle. So I think from legal scholarship, especially in comparative legal scholarship, we're guilty about oversimplifying the gap, saying, especially for example, like, oh, no one has written this law from Malaysia angle, that's the gap. So that's where I'm coming in. For some committees, you can get away with it, but others, they don't like this at all, because it's like, just because no one has framed it within that particular region doesn't mean that there's not existing literature here. It's not really a gap. So it's the way you communicate it in that donut way is what.
Absolutely. Well said, my love. And of course, if you can then hook it into jurisprudence as well, transformational theories of law, perhaps through the case study or case law, then you're living the dream as well. Brilliant. And Jess, hasn't City helped you today? You two were meant to be on the same call today, but I think the donut's great. Jules, I've definitely got the reference. You've probably got it closer to hand in the leadership literature. Somebody invented the leadership donut. I remember the shape. So Jess, I'd be drawing the shape and I'd actually I'd put the literature in the bits of the donut and I'd draw it and I'd put it in your bloody introduction, mate. I'd draw it. We'll come back to Jess in a second. Beautiful Maeve, did you have your hand up, darling? Or sound, darling.
All right, sorry, I did. I was so excited by the idea of the referencing by platforms. My brain was exploding, and I was like, oh. So anyhow, then I had a leap of something I've been thinking during the week. So I watched your relatively recent blog on E.P. Thompson. I was very excited by that work. So I'm trying to rack my brains and throwing it open to you and hive mind anyone else who's onto this, including Aidan and Piper, because I know you mentioned them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how I can link E.P. Thompson to my sonics. I'm trying to think how that could anchor the chapter with a Marxist historical framework.
I would use, and obviously Liam's still on the call too, so I'll go to Liam, but I would be using the trope of history from below. I would be using it from E.P. Thompson, I'd be using it from Zinn, because the nature of the soundscapes, like the very landscape itself, Ferdinand Braudel, but the nature of the soundscape is the sounds undergird. It is history from below. It is history that we ignore. We put on headphones to actively avoid it. So I would be working through the trope of history from below, that so much of sonic culture is invisible because it's not involved in the eyes, and therefore discredited, demeaned or undermined. What do you think, Liam? I'd go history from below.
Sorry, yeah, I was speaking about this actually with AW in Manchester. She did a work placement in the 80s, and Tony Benn was there and E.P. Thompson, and she had a conversation with E.P. Thompson. It said such an impassioned speaker, but also there's lots of E.P. Thompson in the British Archives on record. So yeah, I'd look at that as well, Maeve, because you know, the kind of like the oral nature of what, you know, the storytelling about working class history.
Yes.
And that's all been captured sonically.
And the British Library has released all of that for free. About 2 years ago, they did that big sound release, didn't they, Liam? And it just changed my life. Unbelievable.
They did, but also I don't know what's going on with the British Library, because they were cyber attacked last year, and it just, like, my thesis is still not, it's been delisted, and millions of others in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland that were listed in the British Library, but I've had no information. I don't think my thesis has been stolen.
No.
I don't think, but it's disappeared from their archive.
It's such a nationally and internationally precious series of resources there. But also look at the Internet Archive. That's that great archive based in San Fran, and they have a stack of stuff, and they have a beautiful sonic library, you know, and they curate it with great care. So I'm with Liam. These materials on history from below, hearing the voice of people, and History Workshop was great on that. Raphael Samuel, these names matter a lot. You know, we don't talk about History Workshop as much as we should, but History from Below was transformative. So that might be the way through, Maeve. Just play with that and see if it fits, all right?
I will. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Oh, go, Liam. Go, brother.
Well, it's ironic because I found you through your podcast, Tara. Like, it wasn't through the YouTube. It wasn't through, I mean, you taught my friend at Bolton, James, you know, from the Manchester queer scene, but it wasn't through, and I didn't even know about your connections to Steve until you popped up together in a podcast. And I was like, oh my God, that is the Ray Voss bloke and End of the Century Party. And they're married. Like, it was through podcasting that I discovered that when you did an interview together. And I was like, wow, you know, all these pieces are coming together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sonic scholar, you know, that I do sound, and, you know, podcasts hopefully will be coming back shortly as well. The video thing is very new simply because as I've had the dean jobs around the world, our students have been around the world, like beautiful Jen's in Brisbane. And I did think, even though it's hard work and I hate doing sort of weekly videos, it's very, because you can see yourself and how your life is destroying itself. But Liam, the gift is that people need to see their dean. And so seeing me, if they're in Brisbane or they're with Doug in Adelaide, it makes a difference. So that's why we went visual, because it's easier and it builds a connection easier. But the sonic is a very special mode of communication. You're the best. Should we go to Jen, and then we're going to quickly whip through the introduction in the last quarter of our gig. How are you,
Thank you.
Jen? You
Hi,
said,
I'm good.
I read your work. You are a genius, Jen.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have a probably not very genius question. You know, earlier you were saying about including the non-traditional research outputs in your lit review. I just wanted to check something that you said. You were giving somebody else advice, and you said like about arrange it under, for example, scholarly monographs, peer-reviewed, grey literature. Do I arrange it like that in my lit review, or were you saying to arrange it like that in your citations list?
In your reference list bibliography, in your reference list.
Okay.
And look, I'm out of fashion now. I did my PhD and my research masters in that way. Adrian, maybe because he's moving through so many multimodal things, it may be great for you to differentiate by platform. The problem, Jen, is everybody's now using automated software to do their reference bibliography, and this capacity to do a multimodal by platform is not available in the software. So if the software doesn't do it, it doesn't work. See, Doug's just gone, yeah, no, my life is ruined, it's over. So, but what I would do is in your literature review, if you have got what beautiful Jess is talking about, so you have got, or Lorraine, you've got the films, you've got the grey literature, then, you know, put disco lights around it in your literature review, as shown through the nitros. You know, nitros, you know, do the big, look at me, do the nitros are an important and emerging area of allied health professions, and a literature review must incorporate multimodal sources.
Okay, good. That answers my question.
Examiners will lose their mind, Jen. The people like me will start doing this as I'm examining it. You, Jen, right? Okay, so do that. Just put disco lights around it so it shows you've been completist in your literature review.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Talk to me, brother.
With Endo, at the end of your when you finished your writing it up, your references, you can turn it all into text, and then you can cut and add and order it in whatever format you like.
And that's why you did the EndNote training and I didn't, Doug. So Doug,
that's why you do it by hand. I don't know how you do it by hand all this time, but
I'm on, and Darling, I've got less of life in front of me than behind me, and I've got all this reading. So I haven't got enough life left to put it in an EndNote library, Angel. I haven't got enough life left. So, so yeah, you do that. You do that, Doug. So that's fantastic. And that's why you did that training, and that's why you're legendary. Well done. Look, I'm just going to touch base with Adrian for a second on the multimodal stuff, and then we'll do a quick sort of 5 minutes on the intro and see how we go. Now, Adrian, how are you structuring, noting the exegetical component, how are you structuring the literature, brother?
Well, it's kind of, I'm glad I attend these meetings, because it was you who introduced the whole idea of having integrated literature review. It's basically just woven in and throughout the exegesis the whole way through, and it kind of comes to a fore through the discussion and yeah, the key findings. So yeah, just bringing that all out. But I'm still, which I'm writing at the moment, but yeah, it's interesting because I don't know, there's just so many different things, and sometimes I don't know where to put them, what's going to make more sense, where to place things. I'm going to write it all up, and then I'm going to do what you've suggested and basically cut it all up and then just look where the pieces fit. So yeah.
Yeah, I do it with books still, Adrian, mate, where you've got this big book, and particularly I'm having to write it at the moment, like I'm doing, you know, an hour a day. In the old days, I used to be able to sort of like have a day and I'd be able to break the back of things, but I'm at an hour a day. I still I print it out, I put it all over the floor. Jamie's seen this when I do it in the lounge room. It's like, here it is. And then you just make sure all the bits fit together. So that's where cut and paste originally came from. We have this digital version, but it was based on an analog practice that writers used. So good on you, Adrian.
Yeah, but drawing back to your question, I think because I've chosen this practice-based or practice-led approach, it's that's what I've grounded it in. And because it's based in a Samoan context, I've preferenced literature that is Samoan.
Brilliant.
And obviously drawn on other Indigenous theories that are related. And because there's this heavy focus on relationality within Indigenous contexts, and especially in Samoa, that has kind of influenced a lot of things as well, particularly the philosophy, but also, you know, the axiology, ontology, methodology, everything. So it's made it harder, but this iterative practice-based approach has kind of grounded everything and is kind of drawing things together. It's just a case of making it kind of communicable, if that makes sense.
It does. And you see how I feel so much cleverer after I've heard Adrian. Adrian, that's how you get a 1-1. That's how you pass a thesis with ease. Well done, you. Unbelievable. Now, I'll go quickly back to Jen if I can. Then Jess, I'm just going to list sort of the 5 characteristics of the intro, and even if we have to do it again next week, we will. But Jen, talk to us, Angel. Jen, darling, was your hand up again on your phone? Sound, Angel? I'll quickly move off Jen. Jen, I'm just going to do the intro stuff and we'll return back to you if we can. So Jess, let's do, oh, look at that beautiful dog. What's the dog's name?
Oh, this is Aslo. Haven't I introduced Aslo before?
Oh,
This is my therapy dog, Tara.
oh.
He comes to work with me. He's just wondering why he can't cuddle anyone right now.
She's got the same hair colour as me. We look like sisters.
I've been in Bunnings and they said, he looks like you.
Mind you, there
I
is
know.
there's
It's hilarious. You know how they said people look like their dogs?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
That's why I'm going to get Jamie and I a Tibetan Mastiff. Go, Jess.
They are beautiful. I wanted one of them and my husband said, no, Jess, you can't walk it. Now, the circle, the leadership thing that you were talking about, is that the Simon Sinek one where he talks about the middle of the donut is the how, the why, then the how, and then the what. And you have to, is that the one you're talking about? Because I actually have come up, it's called the golden circle.
Yeah, no, that's
a
another
different
model.
one?
That's
Okay.
him doing his what, how, why. The donut, but that's again, donut is a metaphor people use all the time. Here's the crucial stuff, and there's a bloody hole in the middle. And what are you going to do with it?
Okay, so the one that was shared by Julie, that's really cool. Thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that.
Leadership theory uses it a lot because you can have everything in place, but if you've got, I'll use the Derridean phrase, you've got the Derridean empty centre, you can have as much leadership as you like, but if you ain't got nobody following you, mate, you ain't a leader, you're going for a walk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I'll be quick. I'll just list down what I've done for the intro, and team will return to the intro next week. Okay. So what does an introduction do? It must orient the examiner. It orients the examiner into your world. You do not pass if you haven't got a good, strong introduction. You've got to get your examiner in your vista. You've got to then specify what is your area of focus, what is your discipline. Okay, be clear on discipline. If it's interdisciplinary, post-disciplinary, speak the words, write the words down. Who are you is the next area. Who are you? Why are we walking with you on this? Who are you? Why do you matter? This is important for Jess, the where of your research. Where are you writing it? And what does that positioning give you? What is the vista from where you are currently placed? Okay, what can you see because of where you are? Then think about why this thesis exists and why it exists now. At this point, start to list your research questions. Bang, thanks for playing. Then put in your SOC, your significant original contribution to knowledge. And then in the final little bit of your introduction, do that dreadful, in chapter 1, I'll be doing this. And chapter 4, I'll be doing this. Because we all love that so much. Like, we're about to read 100,000 words, just protect us. Give us a paragraph on chapter 2 and that'll do. But then also people then stop. They go, so chapter 8, I've done this. And then they just stop. It's like, no, write a really strong conclusion in your introduction. It says, this is our journey. Thank you. These are the summary. This is where we're going. Let's begin, and let's begin now. And then introduce your first chapter. So there's that first smooth transition in. Okay. So that's sort of the intro. Now, Jess, is that helping a bit? If you just use those headings, that's your intro. You're done.
Yeah, it is. I forgot to record that bit that you said. So when's the recording going up so I can step that out?
Well, it depends on the internet in Rapid Creek, but I think give me 2.25 hours after
Righto.
give me an hour after Right Club, and I should have this thing up for you in the final 5 minutes. But darling, if you just do those
Excellent.
things, and look,
Yeah,
we
because
might
that
talk
would be
about it
good to
next week.
stop, pause, do that bit. Next, do that bit.
So
Answer that question.
can I give you homework, because we're back to the Tara Jess homework configuration. So look at that. Who are you? Why are you ruining my life? So Jess, because I've given you a lot of homework this week. Jess, can you're my crash test dummy. Can you put those headings in and trial that this week and report back to us on those headings what's going on, okay? And I'll get everybody, if you can have a think about those headings, we'll go through them much slower and we'll talk about what works and what doesn't. Now, Kim, is there any more homework you can give me? We haven't addressed that 4 gentlemen's battery hen farmer supervisor, which we'll do next week. Is there any other homework you want to give me to research in the next week? Doug, do you need anything from me? What's that about? Yeah, no. See, Jamie's had
I sent back the article yesterday, so I'll work on that again in the next half hour, and we'll go from there.
I'm excited. So the article, just so you know, the article we talked about last week, I've read it. It's very, very strong. We still haven't decided if Doug's going hand solo or he's
We'll do a group one, a joint one.
So you're going to involve your Sith Lords, are you? So your Sith Lords are going to be involved?
You didn't read the email last night.
No, I didn't read the email last night, Doug. It's been a little bit of a busy morning, but I will read it at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
But you got another email about 4:30
this morning.
Yesterday.
Oh, right. No, I will read that as soon as I'm off these calls, Doug, I promise. But well done you for making those corrections. Proud of you. So it looks like we're up, Sith Lord. We'll be writing with Doug, Jamie.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you. So colleagues, this has been
impressive,
digital.
most impressive.
I'm very impressive. So colleagues, digital office hours 50 is over. We got to 50. It is astonishing. See many of you in Right Club. Blessings. Good on you, Jess. Rock and roll, girlfriend.
Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.